你们好, fellow Chinese language learners. My name is Bai Lao Shi. Welcome to Chinese Patterns, where I teach you basic Mandarin Chinese grammar points and other things that are useful for learning Chinese. If after watching this episode you felt it was useful, please press the like button and hit subscribe. And with that, let's get started. Most likely, you have learned how to count to 10 in Chinese by now. And if I were to ask you how we say the number 2 in Chinese, you would likely say 二. But some of you might be surprised to find out that there is another 2, which is 两. If you didn't know that there are 2 2's in Chinese, or you weren't sure of the distinction between them, this episode will tell you how to use them. Now let's start with 二, because it is the 2 you are most likely to have learned before. Basically, use 二 whenever you are counting. So you would always say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you would never say 1, 2, 3, 4. Easy, right? But let's dig a little deeper and talk about ordinal numbers. Ordinal numbers are first, second, third, and so on. The pattern for doing ordinal numbers is as follows. The Chinese word 第 plus a number. The Chinese word 第 is basically like the ST in first or the TH in fifth. So how do you think we would say second? Would we say 第二 or 第两? If you guessed 第二, you are right. When we are using ordinal numbers, we are basically counting still. We say first, second, third, and so on. So 二, our number for counting, is still used, and that would be 第二. Now, let's take a look at 两. 两 is used when we are saying the quantity of things. We would use this when we want to say things like 2 dogs, 2 cars, 2 students, and so on. In order to fully understand the following examples, you need to understand the concept of measure words. If you don't know what measure words are, please watch Chinese Patterns Episode 2. And with that, here are some examples. 两个朋友, 2 friends. 两块蛋糕, 2 pieces of cake. 两条鱼, 2 fish. Hopefully that makes sense. To finish off this episode, for those of you who can count higher than 10, I wanted to talk about how to express quantities that aren't 2 but contain 2. So for example, how do we say 20 and how would we say 22? First, 20. How do we say it when we are saying there is a quantity of 20 of something? If you say 20, you are correct. Why? Because while 20 contains 2, it is not the number 2. Do you get it? This can be a little bit hard to grasp at first. Now how about a quantity of 22? How do you think we say it? If you guessed 22, you are correct. Again, this number contains the number 2, but it isn't 2. So as an example, if you wanted to say 22 people, we cannot say 22个人, but we can say and should say 22个人, 22 people. Now what I just went through should get you up until 100. However, after you get into the hundreds, the usage of 2 becomes less consistent, and it is beyond the scope of this lesson to teach it. But if you did master today's concepts, you are well along the way to use the 2 2's correctly. And finally, I wanted to discuss something with you that I think could be on your mind. Some of you might be wondering, why are there 2 2's in Chinese? Well, that's something I've been trying to figure out for a long time, and honestly, I haven't found a definitive answer. Actually, I think it really doesn't matter. In the end, languages often don't make sense. rest assured, there are lots of Chinese people who think certain aspects of English makes no sense. And that's just the way it goes. I personally think it is more interesting that way when we have little quirks here and there. And with that, we are finished. I hope you are clear on how to express the number 2 in Chinese if you weren't before. If you liked this video and or found it useful, please be sure to press the like button below and hit subscribe. Thank you, 谢谢, and please come again. Until next time, 下次再见.